my name is Janice B. Gordon, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, listed number 9 of 43 best podcasts for every sales professional. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert, awarded the RevTech Strategist Award of 2024. In this week's episode of Scale Your Sales Podcast, my guest describes himself as a sales nerd. He says his particular experience includes building strong cultures. And because of his experience at LinkedIn, he is really keen to ensure that he continues what he learned there around mental well-being and diversity in sales. So he is an ally and a real advocate for these subjects, investing his time in organizations like Sales Psyche. So the discussion took us to talk about developing teams, talking further about how leaders can attract diversity and what forms of diversity in teams. So you're going to love the conversation. My next guest spent 10 years at LinkedIn, starting when nobody knew what LinkedIn was. One of the first 15 employees outside of the US. He then left to set up Sales Loft in EMEA. And as the first person on the ground, he grew them to in excess of 25 million and 125 people. Now Chief Commercial Officer at Latif. So welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, Ollie Sharpe.
Thank you, Janice. It's great to be here. Good to see you.
Well, it's wonderful to see you. I have been chasing you down for a little while now, Ollie, haven't I, to try and get you on the podcast. I think I've seen you a few times, one Sales Confidence, another one maybe We Are Wiser. Quite a few times you popping up, and I said, I really love what he has to say. I need to get him on the podcast. So I'm really glad you're here.
Good, thank you. I found my fan. That's all right. I found you.
The one fan. So Ollie, me being your one fan, that means I can ask you anything. Yeah,
you can do. You can. Okay. I can try and answer them.
Okay. Do you know, I kind of read lots of things about you, and you're really a very humble person, and that's kind of almost contrary to the sales environment, Ollie.
I don't know whether it's humble or I lack confidence in myself. I think it's probably both of them, and sometimes I get surprised at what happens and stuff. But yeah, thank you. It's nice of you to say so.
Well, I just, the thing is, when you find somebody that is humble, you want to lean into it more, really. And you often find there's a perception of salespeople need to be extroverts and out there, and they're really, they're all talking all over you. And what you do is you do this, don't you, rather than leaning into it. So I'm going to be leaning into you today, Ollie.
Go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
I know that building a strong culture is really important to you and part of your expertise, and it's something that you've done throughout your career. And I'd really like to know, what is the source of that? Why is it that culture underpins so much of the sales environment that you create?
Yeah, I think that, I learned a lot of it when I was at LinkedIn. I spent 10 years at LinkedIn. And while I was there, I worked for some fantastic leaders. Jeff Weiner was the CEO. Mike Gamson was running a lot of the business. And culture and values was right at the forefront of everything they did. And the way that they led as people and cared about people was just made such a difference. And there's something called conscious leadership, which a lot of people at G2 use as well. And conscious leadership, I think, is fantastic. Just the way that it actually makes you more aware of how people are and how you give feedback and how thoughtful you are. And that impacted me a lot. I learned a lot. You get some very good management training, but you're surrounded by these people that you look up to that are very thoughtful and very good at their jobs. And I think it comes a lot from there. And I think that when you go to an environment where it's not like that, you realize how much it impacts you, and this is for me, I talk a lot in the industry about mental well-being, because I think there is a problem in the industry that we don't look after people's mental well-being, and especially now because we work from home more, and I don't think it's easy for anybody to work from home full time. So the mental well-being side, it does get impacted when leaders aren't that thoughtful or aren't that conscious about what they're doing, and that shaped me a lot. And it's at the time when I was at LinkedIn, I went through some personal stuff. My wife had cancer, and it's the way they treated me through that. My boss said, concentrate on your wife, and second priority is your kids, third priority is yourself, and then work, it comes fourth. And I was like, wow, that's really strange. And what they got from me because of that, my dedication, my commitment to the business was huge. So I fully back that. I think it's the right thing to do.
I mean, that's wonderful, because I think it's when people treat you with all the humanity, then you're so much loyal. You're more loyal to that organization, to that person. And it's actually, it's when someone really sees you, they really see you, they really are able to step into your world and empathize and you know, make arrangements around that for you without you having to ask. It makes a massive difference, because you always remember those people in your life that have really seen you.
You do, and I think that it is a reminder that we're all different, and and I honestly believe, like when I built the business at Sales Loft, one of my priorities was just to build a team of very different people. I wanted, when we talk about diversity, a lot of people just go to two types of diversity. To me, diversity is also cognitive diversity, skills diversity. And when you build a team, if you have these different people, you've got to lead differently, because you've got to understand people. And whether people in my team have had ADHD or whether they've been introverts or anything like that, everyone's different, and everyone has their own superpower and their own skill. And it is about being heard, being listened to, being understood. And LinkedIn used to talk about like the diversity inclusion, about being invited to a party, dancing like nobody's watching. And I think that it's really interesting when you think like that. But what it does to me, it makes people, when you understand people and you're not on their back the whole time, it makes them happier. And there's a very good book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. And it scientifically proves that when people are happy, they're more creative, they're better at their job, they're more successful, and all of these kind of things. And I think that if you can create that environment, you have to make people accountable at the same time. It's not just a case of let's just have fun and let's be happy. You've got to drive accountability. But yeah, it's about understanding people and culture. Jeff Weiner talked about this a lot. Culture and people is the success or failure of a business. And you can see it when you walk into a business. And if the culture is a priority and strong, then they're a lot more likely to be successful.
So when you move to an organization, do you really interview, interrogate, research the culture, the leadership in that culture before you think, well, I'm not going to join, or I'm going to join? Is that the thing that makes a difference to you?
I'd like to say yes. It's hard to do because you're always looking from the outside. I think that you can go there you can interview someone, and sometimes you can tell straight away. And I don't mean this in a negative way, because it's just like two people. It doesn't mean that if I don't like a culture, I'm calling the culture bad. It's just not right for me. And I may not be right for their culture, but it is so hard when you're interviewing, I think, to be an outsider looking in, because like they may be saying, oh yeah, I love working really long hours or whatever. They may not be 100% truthful, but I think I'd love to be able to say, yes, I do. I try to prioritize it, but I learned that it's very, very hard to do. And you can't really get under the skin until you start working there. So it becomes an issue.
And it is an issue because if if you're hiring and you hire and make mistakes, it can, the cost is quite high, and the impact on the rest of the team. So, what do you look for when you're hiring into your team?
So there's a certain, the core, let's say, skills or knowledge that I look for in regards to, and John McMahon talks about it, Mark Roberts talks about it. There's certain things like the way, can they learn? Are they keen to learn? Are they got certain temperament, mentality, etc.? On top of that, I also look at the culture fit, and I think that culture fit or culture add, and it's different, because I think that what you've got to do is, what I think you've got to do is align on the values. Doesn't mean that everyone has to be the same, because people see culture fit as a thing that I think it's a bad thing, because it probably means that you've got this small nucleus of a culture that isn't actually very diverse. Whereas if you go for culture add but align on values, then I think that's what works. And this is what I did at SalesLoft. So I put that very highly in what I do. I make sure most companies, like when I was at SalesLoft, it was part of the process, not put in by me. It was done. And at LinkedIn, where we had a culture interview, and some people within the organization were trained on how to interview on culture. And you normally have your cultural values listed and you have questions around those. And I think, I mean, that can't tell everything, but I think normally you can see whether your values are aligned from when you're speaking to people. And I've often got to the end of an interview and I've not felt I've got to know the person. And I've addressed it with them. I said, look, your background is great, but I don't feel I know you. And I've got to make sure that we can work together and try get them out of their shell a little bit to understand more about them. And I've had people on the interview saying, yeah, I was actually brought up by my dad and I'm not very open with lots of things that happen. So that's why I've been like this and stuff. And when you see someone open up, which hopefully as an interviewer, you can get people to open up, I think you get a better understanding of them. When it's a structured process where ask them this, ask them that, I don't think that lets people open up. And I think you've got to let them open up in an interview to get to know them.
Yeah, and I think it takes a particular skill to do that as well. One, it's curiosity. You're interested in that person, and because often you can discount them and they haven't got the job, but actually they may be your kind of next best client. So often we don't have those skills within our organizations. You know, this is something that you've identified based on your experience. What happens when you've got other sales and leaders and managers that haven't had that particular experience, and they may be a lot about the numbers because that's how they came in and that's what they know. But the thing is that you might have to live with the kind of inherit that culture or that team. Yeah.
I agree. And I think that I think I have come across that in the past, and it's hard to say you have to interview like this, because I want people, if they report into me, to feel that they've got the freedom to do what they want. And my job as an interviewer, if someone reports to me and they're hiring for their team, my job is to make sure that I can highlight things they may not have considered. Sometimes I can say, no, you're not taking that person on. But most of the time it's, have you looked at this? I think you should dig deeper here. But you're right. I mean, it's hard when I've always been involved in the interview process, no matter if they're in my organization. But it is hard to say, I want you to interview like this because it's around personality. But I think that it's about weighing up with people, because I've taken leaders that are a lot more numbers focused and less culture focused than me. But I've known that I can outweigh that a little bit. I can jump in, I can be involved a lot to make sure that I can add that side to it. Because no team, there's no point in me taking somebody to report into me that is very similar to me. Absolutely no point whatsoever. We just become just robots. I'd rather take somebody that actually fits within our culture and our values, but adds the bits that I can't do. And their strengths are my weaknesses. And you've got to compensate for things when you do that. So I can overcompensate on the culture and the empathy and the compassion, I think, if I take someone that is more numbers focused.
Yeah. And, you've already mentioned that diversity is really important for you, to you, and this is what you look for. And I use a process that is based upon 25 years of sales specific, and it's predicted and verified data. So like assessments, sales specific assessments, and we're not talking about the Myers-Briggs or this and all of that personality and behavior. It's sales specific traits and characteristics. And So we know what great looks like for all industries across the world and sectors. And so we're able to match that and recommend, so that when we get to the interview, resumes, CVs, interviews, the predictive effectiveness of those are only 20%. It's pretty crude and crude tool. And we talked about the different personalities that may be on the interview, and we want to have a diverse source. So we have to go broad, but we still need a filter to make sure that we get the cream of the top.
Yeah.
So this is why this is, you know, a great process to make sure that you don't have the same, you know, a mini me in your team, and you have that diversity. It kind of gets through all of the usual bias filters. So that's, you know, fantastic. Another area I'd like to talk to you about is partnering. You know, partnering with buyers and working out how you can get it right for them. So talk to me more about that.
I think, I mean, I see partnering with buyers very similar to partnering with people that I hire, because when I hire them, it's a joint decision and it's for us to make them successful. And when we're selling to somebody, it's a joint process really to work out whether our solution is right for them and solves their pains. And you don't want to sell something that doesn't, but a lot of the time, really, let's be honest, to me, in a sales process, the qualification and discovery is the key to it. And that's where you've got to actually find the pain that you can solve. And a lot of the time, so another salesperson may not go in there and be able to sell to them because they haven't uncovered that pain. They're not concentrating on that part of the process. However, I think when I started SalesLoft, one of the key things I realized, thought about, was because we were selling to sales leaders. And when you're selling to sales leaders, you feel that, okay, well, they're going to know the process I'm going through. So I thought, well, let's just be bold about it. And we got my team all read Andy White's Medic book, and we had some of the training from him, and it was fantastic. But my goal was, let's go to market with the best sales or best buying experience that people have. And that means partnering. And I've always told people that salespeople that report into me to think about it as though you've been trained by us. However, we don't employ you. The actual prospect is the one that has already written you a check and paid you, and your job is to consult them to work out whether our tool can solve some of their problems. And you can't gain more money by bringing it in, and you can't lose money by not. What would you do differently? And I think that it just creates a mindset of, I'm going to partner them and find out what problems it solves. And I've been on sales calls where we've said, actually, I don't think our solution is right for you. And I would rather disqualify something out right at the beginning. Like Andy says, you don't regret qualifying out. And if you qualify it out very early because you know what's going to happen later, you're showing partnership. And when they're ready, they will come back to you because they know that you've been honest before. So I do think that the sales buyer experience is very much a partnership, like you say. And I think that that's the way. Sales has got a bad enough name. Let's make it a better name by showing that partnership and showing the honesty and the advisory side rather than just trying to sell.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I'm a yogi, and there's an element of detaching yourself from the result. And so, yes, you know, you do the best you can do, but actually, you know, it's not in your hands. You can't force it. You need to detach yourself and feel happy about the job that you've done. The service that you've given is a good service.
And the qualification side is just working out the bits of where it can go wrong and work on them and work out whether whether it's going to happen. And taking yourself away from the end result. And one word that I love the idea of is equanimity. And as a leader and a salesperson, especially as a leader, I think it's very, very important. And I think that when you take yourself away from the results and show the equanimity, you actually perform better because you're less stressed about everything. But as long as you're trying your hardest, I'm not just saying don't give a shit about anything. I'm talking about you've got to actually care about what you're doing. But I think it's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. And there are some that might, and I think that you've caveated this in that Medic can be very kind of systematic numbers focus that kind of removes that humanity from it. But I think that the phrase that you give your salespeople helps to embed the humanity and the empathy in that.
I think that I think having a medic deal sheet is so helpful, because what it does is it takes away happy years. But what you've got to, and everybody says it's an art and a science. See medic as the science, but you've still got to have the art. And the art to me is looking someone straight in the eyes, smiling at them, and building a relationship and understanding and active listening. When you're doing that and doing some good questioning, you're going back to your desk and you're looking at medic going, actually, we haven't got a champion here. We need to go back and do this. And it's sort of the playbook of what you need to be doing in the sale, but you can't forget about the art. You can't just sit there going, right, what are the metrics you're looking to achieve? That's not what we do. So yeah, it's the art and science, and you've got the robotic side and the actual artist side, and medic is the great back end to what you do, and it tells you what to do.
Yeah, love it. I'd just like to kind of come back to well-being in sales. And tell me a little bit about Sales Psych.
Sales Psyche. So it's run by Chris Hatfield, and it's something I've always been interested in, the mental well-being. I mean, I became more interested when my wife was ill, and from my time at LinkedIn, the way they talked about things. So I started being then I moved to Sales Loft, and I saw it as an opportunity for me to have an impact on an industry, because we're selling to salespeople. Sent to sales leaders, a tool for salespeople. So I realized it gave me a bit of a voice in the industry. And I thought, well, I'm going to do good with that voice. And I want to talk about two things, which was diversity and talking about helping women in sales, etc. And then the other side was mental well-being. And because I do think the problem is less, but I still think it is around the way that we are treated and stuff. So I started talking openly about it and looking into the science of it, about the models, etc. And I got to know Chris Hatfield quite well. And Chris came to me to discuss about helping Sales Psyche, which I do. And also I've done some sessions for them. He's also done some sessions for my team. He gives me coaching when I need it. But then he's also written a book that is coming out, and that comes out soon. And he asked me to write a little bit in there as well, which was an absolute pleasure to do. There's a number of other sales leaders in there. But yeah, Sales Psyche, basically it works with individuals or teams, and it helps with mental well-being. They do one-off days or coaching sessions. When someone used to work for me does a regular session with them, and I think it's great. I think I'm all up for. There's another company called Wellity that do a lot, but they're not just for sales. And I've done some things with those. But yeah, I'm all up for anything that is helping with the mental well-being. And I was thinking the other day, I wonder if there's an opportunity to do something to help with the mental well-being. As I said earlier, I'm not at my best when I'm at home every day. I'm really not. I need to get out once in a while, whether it's 1 or 2 days. And I wondered whether there's an opportunity for a community of people come together that are purely in remote businesses to work in offices, to get together and have friends, if you like, that are in the SaaS space. But I think that is something that should be looked at, because I don't think it's good for us.
I think, do you know, is it one of their co-working space companies have actually, I think they've started to do that. Wow. And I'll have to put in the show notes, dig it out, because I think that's a great idea. So the next question that I have for you is around diversity in sales. And I speak to a lot of sales leaders. They come to me and say, oh, we've tried to get diversity into sales, and whatever, they don't apply, they don't exist, and all of this. So what do you say as an ally and a champion for diversity in sales? What can you say to other leaders that will be listening to this as to what you need to do?
So, I mean, there's different levels of diversity. And first of all, to me, diversity, as I said, there's more the cognitive diversity as well. So making sure that we're cognitive or of people, whatever we want to call it, but that we're not all the same type of person, and it's that we're all different, etc. That's something that I think is easier for people to do, because they just have a mindset of actually rather than thinking of company culture fit, think of culture add, what I don't currently have. So that is the easiest thing to solve. And I think that when I was at LinkedIn, I built a team that wasn't like that. It was everybody was similar to me in the similar backgrounds, etc. And that was a mistake. The other bit, I mean, when we think of diversity, whether we're thinking of gender, race, anything along those lines, I think that it's about you've got to be proactive in it. And I think that you've got to attract them in the beginning. And you can't just sit there and, I mean, first of all, if you have diversity in the team, it is easier to attract other diverse people, full stop, easier. But you've got to start somewhere, because normally we are starting from 100% male, white team of salespeople, like most companies do start. And when I started Salesloft, I hired 7 people, only 1 was female. I couldn't, and because I had to hire quickly. But I then made sure that my goal was to get to a certain percentage. And when I left, we were 46% female, which is, I was like, okay, that's decent. I mean, I wanted to get to 50, but it was good. And so I think you've got to be very proactive. I think that you've got to build the employer brand that shows that you care about these things. And that's not, you can make a lot of money. It's not, we work long hours. It's all of those kind of things. Men and women do look for different things. They think differently. And when they see a job spec, a man, if they tick 2 of the 10 boxes, they'll apply. A female, if they don't tick, only get 9 out of 10 boxes, they won't apply and stuff. And it's making sure your job specs are written right, building the right employer brand, interviewing in the right way, listening, and making sure that you can be more compassionate in an interview process rather than a checklist, and make them want you rather than it just be all about you to them sort of thing. So I think there's a lot of things. There's too many to list, but I think it starts with a leader and putting the right brand out there as a business, and being open about how they think about things, and just slowing down, realizing everyone's different, whether they are about race, gender, whatever, and being open to that and talking about it. Is a good start.
Yeah, love that. Absolutely love that. As you say, being open and talking about it. If you've got a problem in this area, you need to be talking about you've got a problem in this area, and invite people to help you solve it, and listen to them as well.
It's a good point. And it's like when I'm interviewing with a company, it's if they've got really bad attrition of their staff, or they have bad diversity, I will ask them about that. Say, why have you got bad attrition, or what are you doing about your diversity? And if they go, oh, I didn't realize we had bad diversity, that's a no. I mean, I would rather someone in first interview go, look, we've got bad diversity and I need to fix it. It's one of my priorities this year. Then I'm like, okay, you've recognized it and there's a plan to it. You're not blind to it or deaf to it. That's what the first step of it is. And I think that it's being open about that. I mean, being open about your weaknesses is very similar to saying, we've not managed to build a good diverse team here, and that's what I need to change.
Yeah, love it. Excellent. Okay, so how can listeners get hold of you, Ollie?
LinkedIn is a good place. It's I'm obviously on there. So I spent 10 years there, so I think I have to be on there. But yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
Excellent. All right. Well, I've loved talking to you. Thankfully, I've got you on, and
thank you for inviting me. Thank you for chasing me down.
Yeah. Well, it's there was so much that you've said in the interview that it's really nice to actually get somebody that's like yourself, that's had a lot of experience in the industry, but is very open to talk about things that are like diversity, like mental health. So I really do appreciate the conversation with you, and hopefully that will help other sales leaders to be open as well about these issues.
I hope so. That's my goal. Hopefully the openness is, other people do it as well.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Janice. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast. If you like this discussion, feel free to listen to other episodes or watch the captioned show on YouTube and subscribe to future episodes. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you.